Hey guys, and welcome to Advanced Build Orders. In this video, we'll be covering how to do a transport rush and first bomber opening, and as a little bonus, we'll also be doing a Hydra rush as part of this map as well. If you haven't seen my first video on build orders, the first 10 minutes of every game made easy, I highly recommend you go watch that first and then come back to this one, because we will be going over some ideas and concepts covered there that are important to know about for this one. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started on the transport rush, with just a little bit of background on when to actually use this. So this is a perfect map for it because you start alone on this little island right here, and you want to quickly expand over to these other islands. It doesn't necessarily have to be when you're on an island. The map Seton's Clutch also has a cliff starting spot where you'll want to use a transport rush as well to grab the little side island. I plan to make a video on Seton's Clutch and dual gap openings at some point in the future, but as long as you generally know how to do a transport rush, you should be fine starting in the cliff spot for Seton's as well. So let's go ahead and get it started with a Hydro Rush build order, which basically means you're going to start with a factory, and instead of building any power generators, you're going to build all of your core mass extractors and then send your commander down to assist the production of this hydrocarbon. And the reason we do that is because hydrocarbons are so efficient for their price. They produce about as much as 5 power generators, but they only cost about 1.5 times as much as 1 power generator. So basically, if you have a hydro anywhere close to your starting position, you're almost always going to want to do this start right here, just because it is so efficient. So as I mentioned, let's go ahead and begin with a factory. Oh, I can't even click my commander because he's not even in the game yet. But let's go ahead and start with a factory. And actually, let me pause again. Pop quiz. What factory do we want to start with, considering we're doing a transport rush? It might seem like we want to start with an air factory so we can get the transport started right away, but actually no. We're going to go ahead and start with a land factory even though we're doing a transport rush. And the reason for this is because we want engineers and we want them to roll off the line as fast as possible so that they can help in the production of other things and expand the map and all that jazz. And engineers actually have a noticeably longer time to roll off the factory line of an air factory rather than land factories. So if you start with an air factory, your engineers will actually be noticeably slower. It'll make a difference in how fast you're able to expand the map and actually get engineers on the field. So even though we're doing a transport rush, go ahead and queue up a land factory. The only time you'll actually want to start with an air factory is during the first bomber build order, which we will cover later in this video. So with that queued up, I'll go ahead and play and then queue up our 4 mass extractors with no power generators and send our commander down over here to assist the hydrocarbon when it is under production. And I'm going to slow it down just because I have some just talking about what's going on to do. We are going to build engineers from this land factory basically the entire game. So I'm going to put him on infinite repeat. And again, you basically always want a factory on essentially almost every single game other than tiny 1v1s with no reclaim. You're basically always going to want a factory pumping out engineers because it really never hurts to have them. And since this is not a land map, tanks aren't really going to do anything here. It's more of a navy map, so we really just need engineers the entire game, and that's all we need. Bonus points if you notice that I built the land factory out of the way of the commander, because if you build it, say I built it around here or something, there's a chance the commander could have bumped into the land factory and just delayed the amount of time it takes him to actually get over here. So try to build the land factory just out of the way of wherever the hydrocarbon is. And while this is all building, I actually published a game on Steam. It's a couch co-op game, super casual, just turn your brain off and enjoy, kind of fun. I've been working on it on and off for the past few years, and it's on sale for about $1 right now if you watch this video within about a week of it coming out. I don't have a Patreon or sponsor or anything, so if you've ever wanted to support me, this would definitely be the best way. If you do like it and leave a review, it would mean the absolute world to me, so I'll leave a link down below if you do want to check it out. With all that being said, let's go ahead and speed this back up so we can get to the transport rush. Cool, so this land factory just ticked off. Our commander is starting to build the mass extractors, and then he'll work his way down here. The engineer is going to roll off the factory, and then once he does, I'm actually going to slow it down a little bit more just so I can talk about things a little bit easier. So he's rolling off. Let's send him over here, build this hydrocarbon, and then on this map, I'm actually going to send this engineer over to get this little side island and start on a navy factory, some navy production over here. Alternatively, you could have him assist the commander or just go off and do some reclaim, but we will have plenty of engineers to do that. We'll speed it up a little bit here, and it might be a little bit speedy uppy, slowy downy on this, but I'll speed it up a little bit just while there is not too much happening. So, alright, we have this engineer coming off, and again, with a transport rush build order and just a hydrocarbon in general, your power bar is going to get dangerously low, especially with a transport rush. Power stalling is going to be a huge concern. So with this engineer, I'm going to send him upwards to get some of these mass extractors, but I'm going to have him pick up some trees and stuff along the way before going to the mass extractor, just because, again, it is going to be so tight on power, as you'll see. So I have him here getting this one, and then let's have him, reclaim some more, and once he finishes that, he'll pop back up on my idle engineers thing, or we can just... He's gotten enough reclaim. We'll have more engineers later. I'll send him to get these mass extractors and then maybe build a radar up here, and that will be that one. Our commander is marching down here, and super important, really easy to forget this. You want your commander to actually assist the factory. It's really easy just to have him build the mass extractors and just make him walk down here. But if you forget to have him actually assist, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the transport rush, because you'll just stall in energy or just be so far behind your opponent that it's not really worth it. So don't forget to actually have your commander actually assist this. I'll admit I've done that before. And with this commander, we are going to go ahead and build an air factory. And again, guys, it's going to be a very power hungry build. So even though we've built this hydrocarbon plant, we're going to want about 8 to 14 power generators in order to not actually stall. So what that means is I'm going to queue up 4 power generators right here, and it kind of depends on the amount of reclaim you have as well. If you have a lot of trees, you could probably get away with just doing 3 extra power generators. Remember, this is worth about 5, right? So count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can build more than this if you want to be safe, but I'm going to have a lot of my engineers actually go and reclaim. There's another one coming off the factory too. I'm going to have this guy go down here, reclaim some of these trees, grab this mass extractor, reclaim some more trees, and then I'm actually going to send this guy off to the other side of the map over here and grab some of those mass extractors, just expanding that way. And with this commander over here, since we're building 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 power generators, after that, let's go ahead and build up our first air factory. And also super important here, while you're queuing up the next couple orders, just remember to hold the shift key, because if your commander starts producing power at the same time as another engineer is starting the hydrocarbon, you're producing 2 power units at the same time and you will stall power. You want them to be focusing all the resources on just one method of power, because if the resources are split between 2 sources of income, you will stall energy. It's going to be extremely tight, as you'll see, and you just can't afford to build 2 things at the same time. So make sure if you do queue stuff up with your commander that you hold shift and do it after he finishes this first hydrocarbon. So now that we have 3 engineers kind of doing a little expansion of sorts, the next 5 to 6 engineers that roll off the line are basically going to assist the commander with the air factory and then hang out right next to the air factory for the transport. The next engineers are going to be the ones that actually get transported. And again, since energy is so tight, before having them assist, I'm just going to have them scoop up some trees and stuff over here. Again, trees give power reclaim, and rocks and stuff give mass reclaim. So you want to scoop up trees and stuff if you're low on power. And then bonus points again if when you're assisting the commander, you send all the engineers to the exact same spot so that the transport can pick them up easily at one time and not have to fly to a bunch of different places. Cool. Alright, so that's our 4th engineer, our first one going on the transport. This is our second one that's going on the transport. Again, I'm just going to have him pick up some reclaim and stuff. Maybe a couple over here. It kind of depends on the map again, and then I'll send him to roughly the same spot and have him assist the commander. Speed it up a little bit, and basically we'll just be waiting on some engineers to roll off the line and do a little bit more stuff when this air factory finishes. Cool, here's our 3rd engineer. Again, I'll have him scoop a little bit, and then it's kind of, again, map dependent. If you really want to rush the transport, you don't have to like reclaim like I'm doing here. You could just assist the commander. It really just depends on how much reclaim is right near your base. With this guy, I'll probably just go straight over here and help the commander. And now that our commander is actually building the air factory, let me slow it down a little bit. You have a couple options here at this point. You can build an interceptor and a scout first, and you can be either offensive or defensive with that. If you know your opponent will do a transport rush as well, which in this map it's basically 100% certain, you can try to go in with an interceptor and shoot it down, which would be very sneaky. Or if you're scared about your opponent doing that to you, you can use it defensively. Alternatively, you can just go straight for a transport and kind of try to hope that you get your units down low enough, or that if you build some interceptors afterwards, you basically just try to gamble and get lucky without doing an interceptor. For this video, I'll just go ahead and do the transport first, and I'll waypoint it right here just so that the transport doesn't really fly, too far away, because we do want it to stay close by and pick up all the engineers. So here's another one rolling off the line. Let me just send him close and then again assist the commander. And as for our air factory queue, we definitely want to queue some things early. So air scout is pretty quick to build, and then a couple interceptors. Maybe let's do that for another round of air scout interceptors, and then maybe let's throw a bomber in there just for fun. And if you want to infinite repeat this build once the transport is finished, you can probably go ahead and do that. Probably safe to have 1 air scout for every 2 to 3 interceptors is probably a good ratio. And then let's just go ahead and count our engineers really quick. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 engineers that are close by. Maybe this one, it's going to be a little bit tight for him to get back over here. Not totally necessary for him to come down here since we do have a lot of energy right now, but I'll go ahead and speed this up just a little bit more. And then this one should be our 6th engineer, so the transport will be at full capacity after this guy comes off the line. And we want our commander and all these engineers to assist the transport right here. And this is where it's going to be so close on power, is because we're going to have so much production going into this that it's just going to be tight. You guys will see. Engineer, let's send you over here, and we can either assist the commander or the factory. It doesn't really matter too much at this point. Let's go ahead and speed that up. Cool. And look at that, our transport is off the line, and we're actually floating a lot of power at this point. I think I reclaimed significantly more than I did when I was testing this, but with that guy rolling off the line, go ahead and select all these guys here, and obviously we don't want the commander, we just want the 6 engineers. Go ahead and tell them to board the transport, and the commander, instead of assisting the air factory, let's tell him to queue up some more PGens and queue up a 2nd air factory. And this next engineer that rolls off the line, super important here, he's going to be our guy that continues to scale power. So all these 6 engineers are going to go off and start building, whatever they're building. Land factories, mass extractors. This guy, do not forget to just build power in your base. I'm using the just line approach. I mentioned it in my last video, but you can also use this grid approach that has this like energy storage built into it as well. Just as long as you're building power, it doesn't matter too much how you're doing it as long as you do it. And so here we go. I'll speed it up a little bit. So this wasn't even perfect. If it was perfect, the transport would have been right over the engineers, so the engineers don't have any walk time. As you can see, they're actually bouncing a little bit there, which isn't great. So a little bit of room for improvement here, but you kind of get the idea. You want the engineers all to be close together and just reduce travel time as much as possible. And while that finishes up, we have another engineer, which we can do whatever we want with him. I'm just going to send him on a general reclaim order. And now that our transport is full, we're going to send them all to different places. And I have a whole video on transports. If any of this doesn't make sense, go watch that video. It'll make a lot more sense. But basically, we're going to manually left click the engineers and drop them off at the places we want them to be. So the first 2 engineers here, you can see they're highlighted. I'm going to hold the shift button, by the way, while I'm doing this. I select them holding the shift button, and I'm actually going to drop them off up near this hydrocarbon power plant, and then I'll have them build this and a factory. Those are the first 2 engineers, and just remember which ones you've selected. I'm going to select another 2, drop them off up on this kind of middle island here, and let's select 1 maybe just to go down here, get these couple mass extractors, and then heck, just for fun, let's select this 1 engineer and see if we can do anything kind of dirty on that island. Probably won't work, but hey, might as well. It's kind of fun. And as always, when you're manually using the transport command instead of the ferry command, send your transport back home when he's finished, and you can grab another set of engineers if they're available. Again, if any of this doesn't make sense, like what the difference between ferry and transport is, go watch my video on transports and it should be clear. In the meantime, looks like our scout just rolled off the line. Again, we can either be offensive or defensive with him. Probably safer to go scout around here to make sure there's no enemy interceptors coming in. Or we can just send him this way, kind of just get some ideas for what's going on, and just send him out, see what's useful, see what's out there. And now that our transport is done, I'm going to go ahead and put this on infinite repeat, as well as making the waypoint a little bit more useful somewhere out here. They'll just kind of fly in the middle map, and then we can use them as we need them. Looks like we have another engineer here who is, oh no, this guy's building power. That's fine. I'll speed it up a little bit so we can see what happens when the transport actually unloads its engineers. But if you look at our economy is doing basically perfectly. We're not floating resources, which is great, but we're not also on the verge of stalling anything either, which is nice. So maybe with this engineer, let's go and start some Navy factories. And again, if you're kind of watching your base and you're not watching the transport super closely, your engineers will pop up here. So I'll speed this up now that we've kind of gone through a lot of the important information. Basically, at this point, I mean, the original build order is pretty much done. I'll speed it up a little bit just to go through a little bit more of what happens once the engineers actually drop. But at this point, guys, this is really all you need to get going for the transport rush. So it looks like we have 1 idle engineer here. Maybe we can just help the Navy factory. And bam, these 2 guys dropped up here. Let's build this hydrocarbon. I'm going to build a land factory, which will mainly just be for a couple engineers to help reclaim, but we could build some tanks, anti-air and stuff if we need to. Here's another idle engineer. Maybe, I don't know, just go on another reclaim order. This lets just assist the existing air factory. Commander, when you're done on this map, you typically go over to this island over here. Another engineer, again, if you need anything to do with him, honestly, maybe let's just keep the engineers around here, just kind of assisting factories. And then once our transport comes back, we can do another drop with him. But this guy's done. Let's go ahead, build a factory. Again, mostly for engineers, but since this island is kind of in the middle of the map, this guy might make some tanks and stuff too. This guy, he's going to make some mass extractors. And actually with you guys, I want to make a radar as well. And looks like another couple engineers. If we want these guys just to hang out kind of close to base and wait for the transport to get back, we can do that. And maybe this naval factory is just making some frigates and submarines on repeat. Maybe this one is just frigates. Honestly, guys, up to you, but the transport should be back soon. We have interceptors in the air. Again, we're still positive. And yeah, guys, I would highly recommend going and practicing this offline before you try to do this in an actual game, because there is a lot of, it's going to be muscle memory, right? You're going to need to be able to do this just kind of without thinking about it, and it's going to be hard to do that on your first try ever. So just start a practice game with no enemies like I have here, and then maybe for this factory, let's just tell it to patrol, and we can build, like, I don't know, a couple of these guys, 5 tanks. I don't know if we need a land scout, but something like that, I don't know. And they can just patrol around this little island. And obviously, you know, I have a bunch of idle things going on, but I've been kind of talking in the background. So now we have a bunch of engineers here who are going to go transport. I want you closer. So it reduces the travel time. And then bam, we have another fully laden transport, which you can really do whatever you want with. But yeah, guys, that'll pretty much wrap it up for the transport rush. Any questions on this, for sure, let me know down in the comments. A lot of this information is from Slotto, which huge shout out to Slotto, by the way. He's like 2100 rated player, one of the best in the world. So if any of you guys, you know, challenging me on, on any of this kind of stuff, join my Discord and ask him, because again, a lot of this information is just directly from him. But other than that, let's go ahead and get to the first bomber. Okay, welcome to the first bomber build order. So if you'll notice, I have us set up on a team game here. I have us on a 6v6 team game with some M28 AI to see if they react well. And the reason I have us on this big map is because typically you'll want to use first bomber mainly on team games. You really don't want to use it on 1v1s, and I'll get into why later. And really not even 2v2s. You'll just be too exposed to a land rush if you use him on 1v1s or 2v2s, and plus the maps are a lot smaller, so a land rush is just so more potent on those kind of small maps. But you really want to keep first bomber for just kind of big team games like this, and particularly asymmetric spawn locations. Again, I'll go into that a little bit after we figure out how to actually pull off this build order, but this should be fine for now. And one more thing to clarify before we actually jump into the build order itself is this is first bomber. So the very first unit that is produced will be a bomber out of an air factory. This is different than just an early bomber, in which case early bomber is basically just a transport rush, which we just did, but instead of a transport, you build a bomber. Early bomber is very, very viable even in 1v1s, but first bomber is just so rarely used because, again, like I mentioned, you're very exposed to just getting rushed by labs or light assault bots. But don't get it confused with early bomber. You can definitely still go second air factory, and then instead of building a transport, you just build a bomber, and you'll have a lot of success that way. But as for first bomber, let's get into it. So first bomber, I believe, is the only build order in the game in which you do not start with any factory at all. You actually are going to start with a power generator. And the reason for this is because you start with so relatively few power compared to mass. Your power bar is just very small and goes down very rapidly. You'll still come very close, as you'll see, but if you don't start with this power, you're guaranteed to just plummet your economy and be in a terrible starting position. So first bomber, you want to throw everything out the window and start with a power generator. And after the power generator, that's when we're going to go ahead and throw down our air factory, like this. And then after this air factory, if you guys remember back to my original build orders videos, which again, I'm going to go ahead and assume you've watched that video so you know relatively how much power to build per factory, we're going to go ahead and queue up another 2 P-gens right after this. Before touching any mass whatsoever, you first build a power generator, then you start with the air factory, and then you build another 2 P-gens just to support the building of this bomber. Okay, and with those very basics out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and push play so we can get the bomber moving. And then there's more stuff you would do. You would build out more of this before. You wouldn't kind of just sit around with not much of your base built out, but I'm going to go ahead and get the bomber in the air first before I build out the rest of this, just so I can kind of explain what we're building and why we're building it. So I will go ahead and I guess I'll zoom out really quick just so we can get a sense of what's going on. So on this map too, there are a bunch of anti-air in the middle of the map. Wow, 2 flaks and then some anti-air turrets, and then same thing over here. So when we build the first bomber,
you just gated into a hell of a mess.
Oh.
Glad you're here.
So when we build the first bomber, we're just going to want to make sure we avoid that flak and go around like this. But okay, cool. So he started on this air factory, and let me slow it down a little bit here. And we're going to want to build an air scout along with our bomber, but we're actually going to want to build the bomber first before we build the air scout. And the reason for this is because the air scout is just so much faster than the bomber that it will catch up to the bomber in no time. The bomber will probably only make it to around here before this air scout catches up to it and passes it. So you don't need to make the scout first just because the bomber needs to go as soon as it can, and the scout will catch up anyway. Okay, so that factory just finished, the bomber is under construction, and again there's going to be a lot happening, so I'm going to slow it down to the max slow speed we can do. And basically, what do we do after we build this bomber and the scout? Well, we're actually going to need to spam up some engineers, and the reason for this is because we're going to be so far behind on our expansion and just kind of gathering mass and stuff that basically we're going to treat this factory as just our engineer producing factory, because we just got to catch up. And it'll basically be our engineer producing factory until we're able to build a land factory that will take over its place. Because if you remember from the transport rush, engineers do roll off the line faster for land factories rather than air factories. So basically, as soon as we can start producing engineers from just a surplus land factory, we should do so. But until then, you gotta do what you gotta do. And let me go ahead while I remember, and let me just waypoint my bomber kind of over in the direction of these enemies, out of the flak and anti-air in the middle of the map. And then let's go ahead and build the rest of our base while this is under production, and I'll kind of explain why as we go. Okay, and for the rest of the base, building out the rest of the base, again, I'm going to hope that you watch that first video, because if we think of these P-gens, these 3 P-gens are supporting this air factory. They're supporting the production specifically of this bomber and this air scout. Now the timing happens to work out that when the commander finishes work on the second P-gen, roughly by the time he's done doing the first couple of these, the bomber and the scout will be finished. So at that point, how many P-gens do we need to build for the rest of the base? If you think about it, all we're building out of these are engineers, which if you look at how much energy these engineers cost, it's like a third, it's less than a third across the board. So this is basically just going to be treated as a regular land factory, a land factory that makes engineers roll off the line slightly slower than a regular land factory, but basically we're not using it as an air factory after this first initial build. So really, after the bomber and the scout, it doesn't need 3 P-gens. It will only really need 1 P-gen to support the production of these engineers. So what that means is basically, after this initial build order, 1 P-gen supports the production of engineers, 1 P-gen supports this mass extractor, this P-gen supports that mass extractor. So really, we already have these 2 built as well. So what that means is we can build 1 mass extractor. I need to walk my commander a little bit. We can build another mass extractor, and we'll have enough power to support both these, because again, 1, 2, 3, and then let's just build another one like this before we build the other mass extractor, and that will be enough power. So again, just kind of think about what's going on here. These 3 original ones support the production of these, and then once we switch over to producing engineers, then they can support the mass extractors. And let's go ahead and continue to apply that logic to the rest of our build, which in our scenario here, we're really not the rear guard air player. We're really not Navy players in this case. It's probably just going to be land spam from us. So let's go ahead and queue up a couple land factories. Again, I'm going to build some power generators before the land factory to make sure they have enough power to run. So I'll make 1 P-gen, then a land factory, and then keeping in mind that our commander's down here, we can add another P-gen for another land factory, just like that. And bang, here we go. Our first bomber is coming off. And really quick, super important here, because I don't actually need to pause quite yet because this bomber needs to get out of the way. Once we start producing the scout, you will power stall. It'll happen. You're going to stall so quickly. I watched some replays from Tyrantaramber, and he's, again, another like 2200 rated player, and he actually pauses his commander once the bomber finishes producing. It happens to work out so well. The 3 P-gens finish at basically the exact time the bomber rolls off the line, and you will stall if you're trying to produce this scout, because there's just not enough energy in your starting bar. So he actually pauses his commander until this scout finishes, and there's a couple things going on at the same time. That's one of them. now that our bomber is actually flying away, slightly different subject here, but the other super critically important thing about first bomber build is to micro your base. Another pop quiz: what is more important, bombing a couple engineers or managing your base? And the answer is going to be managing your base. If you bomb a couple NGs, but you either stall on power or you overflow on mass, or you know, any combination of stalling or overflowing, you might as well not have done the first bomber because you're worse off. Sure, you got an NG or two, but if your economy is just in the trash, then you shouldn't have done this. You should have just done a regular build order. So once this scout comes off the map here, let me speed it up by just a little bit. Once that scout comes off, we can go ahead and unpause our commander and have him keep building the rest of this queue. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the scout can easily catch up the bomber. He's so much faster. So we actually don't want to just send our scout just way off here in front of our bomber, because if I speed this up again, you'll see that, oh shoot, there's another point I want to go over. So much happening right now, I gotta slow it down again. But basically, we don't want to just shoot our scout all the way across the map, because he's going to get there way early, and he's going to alert your opponent that you are doing the first bomber approach, and your opponent is going to spam up mobile AA before this guy even gets there. So what we're going to do instead is just tell our scout to assist the bomber, and this way the scout will kind of stay around this bomber until the bomber gets close. Once the bomber gets close, we can have our scout kind of go around and look for engineers and stuff like that. But for now, just have him assist the bomber to not give away your hand. And let's go ahead and hotkey some of these units, because again, you do not want to forget about your economy, period. If you're forgetting about your economy and you're stalling or overflowing, you would have been better off just not going the first bomber approach. So it's super important to flick back between the bomber on the other side of the map and your base. And I find it easy just to hotkey my commander. You can hotkey your factory, but I'll hotkey my bomber 2, and then if I press the 1 button, it zooms to him. If I press the 2 button, it zooms to the bomber. And that's just an easy way to go back and forth. You can zoom out and zoom in and do all that zoomy stuff, but either one, whichever you guys prefer. So right before this engineer pops off, I'm actually going to go ahead and queue up an attack move order from the factory. And this too is important, because if you see my bars up here, we are dangerously low on both regards. We did not stall anything, but we're dangerously low, right? So we have got to get some reclaim up in here. And the easiest way to do that is just to hold the Alt button from the factory and then queue up an attack move. I can move this even a little bit closer probably. And the cool thing about FAF is if you attack move from a factory, your engineer gets a little bonus range. So we can do that, and then, I don't know, maybe go that way too. But yes, that should be enough for the engineer to actually reclaim. I'll go ahead and play now. Again, lots happening, a lot of moving parts. Slotto, again, shout out. In my Discord, he says that you should try to be like 1700 rated or over to try this. Honestly, guys, there's no FAF police. If you find this fun and you want to try it out in team games, just go for it. But be aware that if you screw up your original build order, you'll probably get flamed by your teammates. So just practice this out a couple times, and again, just offline matches like I'm in right here, just make sure you have it down. Let me speed this up just a little bit here. And that engineer is unfortunately bumping into this power generator, which is unfortunate. But yeah, guys, I mean, that is pretty much the build order. I'm going to continue a little bit just to show you guys some bomber micro. I'm not an expert, but if you're just watching for the build order, that's basically it. You can see we're dangerously low on mass, so hopefully that guy reclaims soon. This guy, let's go build that mass extractor, and huge. This is not a mass heavy map. There's also no trees or anything, so no real energy reclaim. But shoot, can't forget about this bomber. He's still heading over. And okay, so we're reclaiming a little bit. That's awesome. And one of the things that might be helpful for first bomber is to just queue up a bunch of things and have your base be relatively autonomous so that you don't, if you happen to not look back for a little while, it's not absolutely criminal. So, okay, let me slow it down now. Now that we're close, I'm going to send the scout up ahead and kind of tell him to look around for engineers. But basically what you want to do with the bomber is head for the middle of the base first. And you're going to want to bomb power generators and engineers in the middle of the base. And then once your opponent builds AA, which by the way is the counter to this strategy, that's when you're going to want to leave to either the outskirts and try to find, you know, expanding engineers, and or just move to some other player. So there's some bombs dropping in slow motion. Oh my gosh, that micro. No way! M28 I just dodged. Okay, great. So once your bomber drops his load, he's going to do a massive circle around, and it's just totally unnecessary. So once he drops his bomb, tell him to loop back, and then once he's looping back, don't quite see it. You can either bomb the engineer or you can bomb power. Let's see, how much health does this have? I didn't even hit any of the power generators. I think they take 3 bombing runs to destroy a power generator. So, oh my gosh, M28 is insane. Okay, I got it, thank gosh. Okay, and he should be, if he's playing correctly, he should be producing a mobile anti-air. But I don't know if he will be. So let's just target this guy. Scout, you're really far away. How about you just patrol? Something like that. And then after a pass, don't forget to switch back to your base, see what your engineer is doing. Really not a whole lot to do on this map. I'm going to send him down here for these trees and stuff. Looks like I mean, same thing, just go expand, and I'll press the 2 button and switch back. What can we go after? This engineer. Oh, there's a mobile AI. So he did do the mobile AI, and now it's time to skedaddle. So hopefully this doesn't kill my bomber. Bomber, you gotta get the heck out of dodge. Scout, let's just go to the other end of the map and see kind of what people are doing over here. And then bomber, you'll make your way over there if you don't die. Oh gosh, there's 2 anti-airs. Oh, this is gonna be close. Oh wow, okay. So I got 1 bomber so far. I can either target these guys, which might be a juicy target, but he'll definitely intercept me. So I'm just going to try to go up a little bit. And you know what, Scout, we could actually probably go this way since my bomber is over there. Shoot, guys, look at this. Bad habits, man. Factory built and I have nothing producing. So let's go. This is just kind of my go-to land spam build, and then I'm gonna have this one assist, and then commander. Once you finish, let's get you onto the front lines and just start building some stuff. Now that we gave some orders, let's see how this is doing. There's an engineer right here, and what are you doing? There's a base over there. So bomber, turn around, see if you can get this kill. It'll be close. He might not drop his bombs. Oh, he does drop his bombs. You hear the little whistling. And then once he dropped his bombs, quick, tell him to turn around because he's going to fly directly over the mobile anti-air. So he dropped his bombs, turning around, and it looks like, oh man, my scout got shot down by this guy. Okay, so, oh, by that guy too. Okay, oh geez. I don't know if you saw it, but there's another mobile anti-air right there. So our bomber's going to be pretty short-lived. So this was he has 2 kills, I think, 2 engineers. If you're going by just mass alone, I think the 2 engineers just about break evens. Or if you destroy some power generators, that's worth it on a mass cost. But if you think about the intangible costs as well, this red player built 2 mobile anti-airs, and this yellow player built 2 mobile anti-airs. That is huge, just wasted time, mass, energy, and brain power. Obviously, the AI doesn't really have brain power to waste. But if you're doing that against a player and you spark this huge overreaction to mobile anti-airs from each of these guys, that's, oh dear. That's not good. Yeah, our bomber's going down. But yeah, no, it made them waste a lot of time because they're not expanding. If they had an attack move from the factory like this that I had, they had to move their engineers to like kind of juke out of the way. Oh, this isn't even great. but they had to juke with their engineers, so they lose this bonus range. And any orders they had queued up too. If they're building a bunch of power, you know, they lost all that power and everything. So there are some intangible benefits as well. But yeah, the Interceptor got our bomber. So that is pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If there is anything confusing, absolutely let me know in the comments. These are, again, advanced build orders, so it's not all going to be super easy. But hopefully this gives you a fairly good understanding of what we're doing and why. But again, if you want to ask Slotto anything, huge shout out to Slotto and Paradox of War. You guys are both in my Discords. You guys both helped tremendously. Definitely couldn't have made this video without you. So thanks again. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. And hey, go check out Box Zombies. It would mean the world to me. So other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video.